I'm Stacey McMahon and this is Horsepower TV.
Alright, from this side of the car we've obviously removed the entire exhaust system off the car, which we've replaced with a new one, and because of the intercooler that's fitted and that pressure drop that we don't have anymore, we have to do a certain modification to the turbo so that we don't get boost spike through tuning. Now what we basically do is remove the turbocharger and port the wastegate housing and replace the actuator. Now there's two different reasons for that. The first reason is we do the actuator to obviously allow us to increase the boost further, basically gives us more range. And the second thing is obviously to port the wastegate so that we don't have that boost spike when it first comes on. More critical than auto, especially when they kick down, or the guys change down the gear to have some power, that it doesn't boost spike. So very important. So we basically had to disconnect the heat shields and obviously the water and coolant lines to the turbo, the oil lines and drain back systems. We basically use the core guts of the turbo. That doesn't change, it's basically unmodified from standard. Just basically modified the exhaust side of it. So that is obviously a critical area. It's not a piece that gains horsepower, but it's a piece that ensures reliability and longevity of the car. One of the other pieces that we have to take care of once we're doing a mod like this is basically spark plugs. We have to change the spark plug type and heat range. That's done for a specific reason, is that a spark plug, even though most people think it just fires a spark, it's actually quite important to how an engine runs and operates, and how the fuel burns in the cylinder. So the reason for what we're doing is obviously because this engine's going to make more horsepower than what standard is, we basically remove the spark plugs and put a colder heat range in than what is in the standard. We also change the gap. We don't change the ignition coils or ignition type that's fitted to the car factory, but we re-gap the spark plugs. So we basically have a smaller gap now, and the reason for that is so that when it's under higher boost levels, that it doesn't, what they call, basically blow out the spark, so you don't get a sort of a misfire under high acceleration, high power. The other part of what we do XR6 turbos sometimes is valve springs. Valve springs are very important. On a Typhoon they come out with much stronger valve springs than what standard is. The earlier model BAs used to suffer badly from valve spring problems. As soon as the boost was wound up, they would basically overcome the valve spring pressure and cause a high RPM misfire in the engine. The Typhoon though comes out with much stronger valve springs factory, and they're most suitable for the application we're going to use on this car. So that's sort of a saving for the customer. Unfortunately, if you've got a BA, they need to be changed. Okay, this is basically standard turbo setup off the current model BF Typhoon. XR6 turbo Typhoon, same turbo. They only changed basically when they went to the FG, where the XR6 turbo has a slightly smaller turbo than what the F6 does. So basically two mods we've done to this is one, the actuator. This actuator here is a 3-pound actuator standard, very light obviously. We upgrade this to a 12 psi base actuator so that we can basically have more range on when we're tuning the car. So very light sort of standard. This is obviously another way that the manufacturer tries to keep boost down on a fairly big turbo on a fairly big engine. So that's sort of the first mod we do. The second mod we do is obviously this piece here. This is basically the wastegate. Inside here is an internal port that basically bypasses the turbine wheel of the turbo. And what we do is we fit a different type of basically disc to this. This disc is it goes from 28mm to 32mm. Basically the hole for the wastegate is bored out 4mm. This is part of how we control the boost efficiently once we put the intercooler on, so it prevents boost spiking. This mod doesn't gain power, it just allows the tuning to be a lot more accurate. This ensures longevity of the car. This turbo is commonly known, I guess, as a GT35. It's a Garrett turbo with basically a 35 housing. and as you can see, it's a fairly large turbo on the car that's as standard. So these are the simple mods that we do to the turbo. If they're not done, the car can suffer overboosting and obviously can possibly have engine trouble in the future. Now obviously when we're increasing horsepower, it's important that things are right. The more horsepower you have, the less chance you've got for things to go wrong. So it's very important that these things get done. Okay, obviously another way that manufacturers restrict power from the factory is through the exhaust system. As you can currently see, this is the factory exhaust system off a current model BF Typhoon. Obviously the front pipe here, middle muffler and rear section. Obviously this pipe basically is straight off the back of the turbo through a catalytic converter. Catalytic converter is obviously another way that people have power restricted in a factory car. So changing this piece here is probably the most critical piece to a turbocharged car. Obviously we are going to change this to an APS exhaust system, which is much larger. So instead of it being sort of just on 3 inch, we're going to go just above 3.5 inch all the way through to the centre muffler. And we're obviously going to use a high flow cat, which is of very good quality. Now this catalytic converter, a lot of people have a sense that cats restrict power. Yes, in stock form they do, but there's a lot of good quality high performance cats on the market that by simply replacing the cat can give you an added bonus. Obviously by doing a full exhaust system there is other benefits from this. One, you also get a slight engine note. Some people like to hear a small amount of engine note. Obviously two, the restriction that we have through the mufflers is obviously an issue. Sometimes gaining power through better flow than more boost is better for a car. So if we can make the same kind of power on say 15 pounds of boost than we can on say 20 pounds of boost, obviously the longevity of the car is there. The exhaust we're replacing it with is a full manual bent 3.5 inch to dual 2.5 inch via two mufflers. Basically has one at the back and one in the middle, as does the factory car, with two nice little chrome tips coming out the back, so aesthetically it has a good look. The fitment of this exhaust that we're going to replace it with is superb, and you'll see that very shortly. The catalytic converter, I guess, is the main part of the car exhaust system that really does open things up. That you know, it's a very high flowing, reliable cat that can work at very high exhaust temperatures. The bigger that we can make the exhaust, the better. Obviously we reduce back pressure, but obviously sometimes too big can be an overkill. It's a common sort of thing with XR6 turbo that 4 inches, I guess, to go. Yes, sometimes the bigger the better, but in exhaust cases, sometimes too big is obviously a negative product because you can end up having slower spool up rates of turbochargers. So sometimes a compromise between power and drivability is also good. The other thing too is that we obviously have to be conscious of fitment. We don't want to obviously put something on the car that's going to be a lot lower, so that ground clearance is obviously an issue, or that something that's going to be really, really noisy. Sometimes a really noisy exhaust can be a good thing for a little while. Most customers find that after a period of time driving that it can be sometimes annoying. So fitting something that's got a nice note that sounds good and obviously performs well is important. Day two, we've fitted the full APS exhaust system to the car. Obviously front pipe off the factory dump pipe off the turbo through a high flow cat, and then moving obviously into a single 3.5 inch pipe, all made of stainless steel flanger, stainless steel cat. So yeah, it's a good upgrade for the car. So this is a straight bolt-on exhaust. It bolts straight up and mounts to the factory exhaust system. Hangers where the factory system does. Obviously a single entry inlet muffler to a dual 2.5 outlet. The factory exhaust is a just over 2 inch dual 2 inch outlet, so obviously increased in size. It's all stainless steel mounts, and it's a direct bolt-on fit, no modifications required. The rear part of the exhaust system, another large muffler as well. The large mufflers are a good bonus for exhaust systems, one to keep them obviously quiet. This exhaust that APS make actually meets road legal requirements for Australia. So they can be fitted and people can have obviously performance, good looks, good fit, and it's road legal as well, which is obviously a bonus. And then obviously finished off at the end with two nice little chrome tips that finish off the look of the car at the back.
You've been watching Horsepower TV. I'm Stacey McMahon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.